A lot of times I think people have a bigger goal, a bigger destination, a bigger vision, but they don't know, like you're saying, they don't know where to start or how to start. And it's just unpacking, okay, what opportunity is in front of me right now that I can do something about? I'm not going to pay attention to all these things that I could do a little bit later, but I don't have the opportunity now. It's what skill can I work on right now? What's my weakness? What's something that, I'm scared of doing? What immediately can I jump on and, go home and add it to my daily routine?
Welcome, Model FAs. David DeSell here, president of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. Really excited to bring you our guest today. We're going to be talking through some topics that really resonate with me. Hopefully they resonate with you as well. And before I fully introduce Michael Ivanov, I do want to say a quick thank you to Ivan Farber. So Ivan was on our podcast a couple times in a two-part series, also the author of the book Conversations that I recommend quite often. And Michael was on Ivan's podcast, and Ivan had said, hey, I think Michael would be great on your show as well. So he wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Ivan making that introduction. So thank you if you're listening to this episode. And without further ado, when Michael was 18 years old, he dropped his speech class in college and swore he would never speak in public again after a humiliating presentation, which I'm definitely going to ask about that. So stay tuned. And now today, Michael is a game-changing speaker, as luck would have it, and a best-selling author who has impacted thousands of people with his message of resilience. And that's the topic that really, really resonates with me. Originally, he was born in Soviet Russia and is the grandson of a siege of Leningrad and a Dachau camp survivor. Michael's master storytelling ability leaves audiences exhilarated and equipped to act on their inspiration. So hopefully be ready to act after this episode. His success principles empower audiences to smash fears, limitations, and passive excuse-oriented mindsets. And I think that myself included, we all struggle with this at some point in our lives. And maybe you're struggling with this right now in this moment. And if so, this episode is for you. But with that, Michael, welcome to the show.
David, I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. So tell me about your humiliating presentation. I need to hear that backstory, especially because you threw in the towel and then it seems like picked it back up and now you're on stage all the time. So tell me about that presentation.
It's pretty funny how things come full circle in life. One of those things, it's just like you swear, all right, never again. And somehow, life has a way to bring it right back to you, make you face your biggest fears. So in college, I had to take a public speaking class. I just needed one communication class. And so the only one left was the public speaking one because there was, writing classes and I couldn't take that one. And so our first presentation was supposed to be, I think it was like a 3-minute presentation. And, I didn't prepare. I didn't know any of the principles of, public speaking or anything. It was just kind of like, it's all skills that I learned along the way from other people because, clearly our teacher didn't set us up for success. But I just showed up. I thought I'd wing it, 3 minutes, I can do this. And about a minute and a half into it, I completely forgot what I was going to say. I blacked out. And I'm standing, everyone's looking at me in the class. I don't know what I'm up there talking about. I don't remember what my last sentence was. And so right in the middle of the class, I froze up and I just walked out of the class. I didn't even look at the teacher. I just walked right out of the classroom. The next day I showed up and I dropped the class and it never came back. And so it was one of those things where I was like, I don't like speaking. I don't like anything to do with it. And that just proved it for me. And so it was just absolutely humiliating for me.
So you speak on topics where there's a theme of, smashing fears and limitations and overall message of resilience. So I'm curious to know, before we dive into detail of those various topics, in your experience, you went from bombing the presentation, walking out of the class, dropping the class, to now you do this full time and you speak all the time. So what was kind of the precipice of getting back into this topic of speaking, getting on stages? What was that change that occurred?
So change didn't happen quickly. It happened over years. When I was going to college, I was kind of coming from the Soviet Union and that kind of a thing. So I had, big dreams, big ideas, just like, we do oftentimes when we're younger. But when it was time for me to choose a career, go to college, it was kind of like, okay, I got to get my dad off my back. So I'll just choose something. So I chose to do IT and kind of put aside all the dreams, all the things that I had. And so I ended up being, I think I was about 25 years old at the time, where I'm working for a job where I'm miserable, working for a boss that I don't like. And it was kind of this like moment in my life where I was like, all right, how the heck did I get here? At what point did I forget about all those dreams, all those things that I wanted to do? And I'm kind of looking at my life and I'm like, wow, I haven't done anything that I thought that I was going to do, anything that I promised myself that I was going to do by this point in my life. And it was just like kind of like this moment of, all right, it can't go on like this. Like I was depressed. I was just kind of like, the classic, like living for the weekend, just Monday, just counting down the days till Friday, just so I can get 2 free days. And then, Sunday afternoon, the dread settles back in, it was that kind of a thing. And because, I was raised by grandparents that survived World War II, spent time in concentration camps, and then got out and impacted so many people, raised by parents that left the Soviet Union, came to the United States, without a spare dollar, in their bank account, just so they could give us kids a better future. And now here I am, living out this future allegedly, but I'm miserable. And so it was kind of that moment for me in my life. I'm like, okay, how did I get here? What do I need? Something needs to change. And so for me, the beautiful thing about life is that when you hit that kind of a moment where you're like, I've had enough, like something's got to change. This can't keep going on like this. Life has a way of presenting an opportunity for you. Sometimes that's in the form of an obstacle. Sometimes it's the form of an opportunity. And for me, one day after work, I stopped by the local library and I found in the used book section, I found this book and I paid $1 for it because they were getting rid of all the books, that they couldn't, lend out to people anymore, the torn, dirty books. And so I found this book called A Better Way to Live by Og Mandino. And the book that I mentioned, The Greatest Salesman in the World, is actually by the same author. And I read this book and it completely changed my perspective on life. It completely changed my thinking. It allowed me to take a look at my life and see that I was where I was because of the choices that I made. It wasn't the way I was raised. It wasn't anything. It was a long period of choices that I made over a long period of time, or a lot of choices that I made over a long period of time that got me there. And so completely transformed my thinking. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to some of those dreams, even if I have to do it on the side, even, I'm still showing up to work, but I busted out a little journal and every day I would just write ideas. It was business ideas. It was invention ideas. It was just anything, that I could start working on that would actually bring me purpose. And that's where the idea struck me to want to start writing. Because I sort of had that dream. I used to be kind of a nerd when I was younger. I'd read a lot. And so I was like, I'm going to go back to that dream because I want to do for other people what Og Mandino did for me. He woke up to his purpose and he had a pretty crazy backstory. And he, woke up to his purpose. And because of that, he woke me up to my, purpose and my potential. And so I want to do that for other people. So that's kind of that moment where I jumped back to that and decided that I wanted to write. But Og Mandino was also a motivational speaker. So I'm like, crap, it's coming back. It was one of those things where it's like, it was so scary, but there was just something that attracted me to it, wanting to live the rest of my life out where not only am I, working on myself, it's something that forces me to grow. It still scares the crap out of me to get up on stage in front of people. And so it was something that I was like, all right, this is going to give me purpose. It's something that's always going to make me grow because I'm going to be better, 10 years from now than I am today. I want to be better at 70 than I am, at 50. And so it was just scary, but it drew me. And so that's where I was like, all right, I'm going to have to get into the speaking thing a little bit.
Well, if you heard me typing while you were chatting, I just bought A Better Way to Live, that book. So I'll check that out. Any book that's had sort of a profound impact on someone, I definitely want to read. So I would encourage everyone listening to do so as well. And it's funny that you say, even to this day, even though you speak all the time, that you still get nervous. And I heard that from Dan Allison, one of our partners. He's been speaking for 20 years, a lot of main stages, a lot of workshops. Like I think in his busiest year, it was like over 100 speaking gigs or something like that.
Wow.
And to this day, it doesn't matter what time the speaking gig is at, he cannot eat any food beforehand, like to this day. And I was shocked when I heard that, but it's interesting how the things that scare us may continue to scare us. And I'm actually going to go into one of the habits in one of your keynotes with this. It's not that things no longer scare us, and maybe that happens too, but it's the fact that you're still sort of taking action on facing that fear. And I know one of the 11 habits that you talk about in one of your keynotes titled Stay Alive All Your Life is about the fact that you must take action. Can you unpack that a little bit more for me? And it could be related to the situation that you just brought us through, or just you can keep it more general, however you want to take it. But I find that there's a lot of folks who either read books, listen to podcasts, go to conferences, and they feel very smart and they feel like they're doing stuff, but they never turn that feeling into actionable steps. And therefore they're in the same spot that they ultimately, started in. So help unpack the idea of taking action, please.
I love that you mentioned feel, because, we're living in a world where you can get inspiration at, every corner. There's thousands of Instagram pages or millions of Instagram pages with motivational quotes. And now we have access to speakers on YouTube. And so taking action is it's a principle that everyone understands and has heard all their life, but it's still the one that people don't incorporate into their life. And so I think everyone just relies on that feeling. Like you were saying, everyone's feeling like they're doing something, but motivation is a good thing. It can give you a spark. It can get you a jump, but if you're not implementing what you learned, if you're not taking action on what you learned, what you were inspired to do, then you're in the same place. And I think people get caught up in that, where they listen to something, they get excited, you either hear a speaker, they read a book, they go to a seminar, they get all excited, they have all this emotion. And when they get home, the emotion fades away and everything's right back to normal. And the problem with that is that the more you do that, the more it becomes a habit not to take action. The more you Jim Rohn used to say, if you take a guy and you motivate him, if you take a guy who's an idiot and you motivate him, nothing changes. You should have a motivated idiot. That's what I like to talk about in my talks is, just don't be a motivated idiot. It's very easy to sit around a coffee shop and talk big and talk about all the things that you're going to do. It's a whole nother thing to get home when the excitement has faded, when the emotion is gone, and now it's time to do the work. And the people that sit down and do the work, despite the feeling, despite, not feeling motivated, those are the people that make progress. And for me, that was the whole thing about taking action as well. It also, the more you train yourself to take action, the minute you're inspired, the easier it is for you to overcome fear as well. It's not just overcoming procrastination and laziness. It's also overcoming fear, because you're basically training yourself that, hey, I'm scared as hell to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, because the goal, the vision is so much more important to me than the fear that I'm facing today. And so taking action is just like, hey, I'm doing it. I'm scared. I'm doing it. I'm scared. I'm still scared. I'm still doing it. And now it's for me, it's not even a question when I'm about to step on stage and I got those nerves. It's not even a question, somewhere deep in the back of my mind, to have that thought that's what if I just take off right now? What if I just run to the parking lot, get in my car, get the hell out of there, and turn off my phone, and no one's going to reach me, and I'll just disappear. But it's that knowing that, hey, I move forward. I take action despite the fear. I take action despite the laziness, despite the not feeling like it. That's something that has helped me, kept me on track, to this day, and a principle that I still hold dearly. So
all of that resonates with me. And I think that the general idea of being inspired and motivated, again, at the conference, from a book, from a podcast, from whatever, and immediately taking action, I agree with all of that. But there may be some folks who are listening that say, hey, that sounds good in theory, but what action am I supposed to be taking? So let's say you're at a conference or you're reading a book and you're just drinking out of a fire hose, and you're like, wow, there's 1,000 things that I can be implementing. Like the saying that I stole from someone is, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So figure out what your first bite is, your second bite is. And I have some other ideas as to how to actually take action and knowing what action to take. But my question to you is, you're at a conference, you're reading the book, you're listening to a podcast, there's a bunch of great information. How do you take that wide array of information and turn it into step 1, step 2, step 3, etc.?
I think figuring out what you can do, what's available to you right now, like what you can, because a lot of times I think people have a bigger goal, a bigger destination, a bigger vision, but they don't know, like you're saying, they don't know where to start or how to start. And it's just unpacking, okay, what opportunity is in front of me right now that I can do something about? I'm not going to pay attention to all these things that I could do a little bit later, but I don't have the opportunity now. It's what skill can I work on right now? What's my weakness? What's something that, I'm scared of doing? What immediately can I jump on and, go home and add it to my daily routine, whether it's, 10 minutes of studying something, 10 minutes of reading, whatever it is. For me, when I made that decision of wanting to become a speaker, I had no idea where to start. And so, I knew, hey, and, in order to become a speaker, you got to get on a stage, but I had no idea how I was going to get onto that stage. And so I showed up to this citywide event where it was just like for all the business leaders and business owners of the city. And it was like an annual event and they had motivational speakers come every year. And I came just to show up. I'm like, okay, these guys are doing it. So I need to go watch what they're doing and find something that I can implement, something I can take. And I'm sitting in the back of that theater and I remember watching and I realized, okay, I need to get on that stage. That's step 1 for me. This is a local event. This is, in front of the business owners, the potential hitters, unlimited. My number 1 goal is now to get on that event. So I waited a year till they had the next event and I auditioned, to be one of the speakers. And I got an email back a couple of weeks later, unfortunately you weren't selected. There's 10, 20, whatever other speakers that we felt were a better fit, that kind of a thing. And immediately it was just like crap, like, you get offended, like, how dare you say I'm not good enough, that kind of a thing. But so I waited another year, but I didn't sit around the whole time. I started putting together my own little events and I'd go out, get some coffee and get some donuts. And I'd trick my friends and family to come in and getting free coffee and donuts and sitting and listen to me. And what I do is I'd put together little 10, 15-minute speeches and I would just practice and I'd get comfortable with telling a story. I'd get comfortable with trying to drive a point home and using different metaphors and things like that. And I'd get comfortable and I got more comfortable. And then that third year that came around, I auditioned and I was selected. And it was one of the biggest opportunities that opened up for me because I got video footage from it. I got to speak on a big stage. It was like a TED Talk style event. If you don't know where to start, just find the one thing that, whether it's a weakness that you have and you need to work on, because that might be the thing that's holding you back. Maybe it's a fear of public speaking. Maybe it's a fear of you don't have the best pitch or whatever it is, just find one thing, start with one thing. Cause like you said, sometimes it is like drinking water out of a fire hose. It's a ton of information. And what I found in my life, if I have all this stuff that I know I could do, I end up doing none of it. That's the funny thing is like when you have too much on your to-do list, you end up doing nothing. You'd think you would start with something, but it's the opposite. And so I always break things down into a couple, in my daily schedule. It's like, hey, these 2-3 things are the most important. This is going to move me forward. And my goal and my, whether it's gaining a skill, working on myself, whatever it is. And so, yeah, that's what I'd say. Start with one, find the one thing that's your biggest weakness, the one thing that's your biggest stumbling block or the biggest thing holding you back, and start with that.
Well, I think too, one of the things to sort of take note of is you went up on stage, you auditioned, you didn't get it, and you could have thrown in the towel, but instead it seemed like every day you worked on something. And I think that what a lot of people don't realize is the first step, you just need to take the most simplest, fastest thing to just quite frankly, do something, right? So as an example, if you're looking to elevate your client experience, perhaps the first step is segmenting your clients so that you know what the A's get, what the B's get, what the C's get, so on and so forth. And honestly, your first step in that is printing out a client list. The second step of that is creating the criteria for the A's, the B, like how does someone go into a particular category? So I'm just kind of relating it to our industry. Sure. And what happens oftentimes is those little tiny itty bitty steps create momentum. So you take that inspiration, that motivation, You start taking action, and then you have that momentum that's going to bring you forward, because the motivation ultimately dissipates over time until you get that next hit. But just those basic little steps. So think about what that big thing is that's in front of you and break it down into itty bitty pieces, and know that the momentum will be created along the way is kind of how I would interpret what you're saying. Yeah,
I love that you said momentum. That momentum is everything. I've heard this example before. As sometimes I use this. If a train is standing on the tracks and the train is standing still, and you put one little block, a little steel block under the drive wheel of a train, it can be, a square inch block. That train can't even start going. It's one little block. It's one little thing in the way. But a train that has a ton of momentum, you put a brick wall in front of it. I mean, that train doesn't even slow down. Momentum is everything. Yeah, momentum helps you overcome fears. It's like I was saying, it's just like it gets you to the point where it's just like, I've done this before. I know I can trust myself that, hey, the last time I was scared, but I just did it anyway. And so I'm doing it again. But that only comes, that kind of trust and confidence in yourself only comes when you've taken those little tiny steps, like you were saying, those tiny little things, that doing everything that you can do and starting small. And if you make a habit of that and you start moving, you'll see that all of a sudden you'll start gaining clarity, and you'll know exactly what you need to do, what the next bigger step and what the next, something, that bigger obstacle that you can tackle comes from. But yeah, like you said, it starts with that little thing and momentum takes over, and it's a powerful, incredible thing.
I always smirk when I hear this, and I've said this myself. I'm sure you've come across this. I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, where you go to do something and maybe something doesn't work out the way that you want, or you basically have this conversation with yourself or, with someone else that's, but this got in the way, or that got in the way, or this got in the way. And anytime someone shares that, I let them air it out and whatnot. And I always recommend a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I'm not sure if you come across that, but
I've heard of that book. I've not read that one specifically.
It's a really good book. And one of the habits in your keynote, point number 5, is blame no one but yourself. And it's the idea, at least in the book and the way I think about it, I'm curious to hear your take, which is everything is your fault. Even if you don't think it's your fault, you got to figure out how it is your fault so that you can take ownership about that and do something about it. So if I'm an advisor, if I'm a person who's sitting here and sort of casting blame of, well, the market's not doing well, or my staff dropped the ball, or this or that, or whatever it may be, how do you unpack the quote that you have here, blame no one but yourself? How does someone actually and practically work through that?
It's a huge thing, man. I used to have all the best excuses. I wasn't born in a wealthy family. We didn't have a lot of opportunities growing up, that kind of a thing. And I was probably the number one, the king of excuses. But most people, it seems like they have an excuse loaded up before you're even done talking. It's like you're giving someone an idea. It's like they already have that excuse ready. And so sometimes people come and complain, or they're talking about their life and, this or the economy or whatever, as you mentioned, they're not even ready for the advice. They might pose the question or the comment in a way to where they're looking for, but they're not. They already have an excuse built ready in their mind. And so there's obstacles. Every single person, everyone listening to this right now has had obstacles in their life. So you can't deny that. We have different things that we deal with. And some of us have obstacles that we have to face that, we wouldn't wish on anyone else. But there are a lot of things in life that we can control. And what we do is we control the things that we can control. And if you can control everything that you can control and make the right decisions, it tends to happen that the things that you can't control, will take care of themselves eventually. I like to use the example. I was reading random facts about sloths one time.
So curious where you're taking this right now.
So baby sloths are known to, as they're crawling through the branches in the trees, they mistake their own hands for branches and they grab on, they'll fall out of trees to their death. And the first time I remember I read that, I laughed so hard. And I remember thinking, man, what a stupid animal. But I thought about it a little bit more. I'm like, we humans are exactly the same. We have this list of reasons for why we're not successful, this list of reasons for why we're not where we want to be at. And we hold on to this list like it's the most precious thing that we got. It's scary to let go, because the minute someone takes that list away from you, all the fingers, now it's revealed that we are where we are because of the choices that we made. And so we hold on to this list, like I said, like it's the most precious thing that we got. And just like those baby sloths, we're holding on to the very thing that's taking us down. Like I said, life, there's obstacles. There's adversity that we have to overcome. But if you take care of the things that you can take care of, everything else seems to kind of work itself out. And I think a lot of people, they think that success or failure is determined by the big obstacle or the big opportunity. Meaning, if it was some big thing that happened to me in my life, that's what determined my downfall. Or someone had this big opportunity, that's why they're successful. And so they point at those big things that happen. But really, if you take a look at someone's daily activities and the choices that they make over a long period of time, most of the time, that's actually what determines where a person's at. There's big obstacles, there's big opportunities. Sure, there's the big things that happen. But if you take a look at a person's life over the last year or two, you can pretty well predict, where they're at right now or how successful they're at right now because of those choices and decisions that they made. So.
Hey, Model FAs. I know you're enjoying this conversation, but I wanted to take a quick break to talk to you about the Model Fa Accelerator. This is a unique collaboration between us and you, where we help you build a financial advising practice that you can be proud of. We focus on the foundational concepts around how to pick a niche or a specialization, how to price your services, how to construct an offer that people are going to buy, and then how to market it and sell it in a way that'll get people to sign on the dotted line and become clients of your firm, all while giving you the information to scale and set up workflows and operational processes that will allow you to reclaim your time and build a practice that doesn't run you. So if you'd like to hear more about that, go to www.modelfa.com/accelerator or www.modelfa.com. Hover over Work With Us and click on Accelerator. Hope to see you in the program.
Well, it's interesting. It was, and I've shared this on the podcast, previous podcast episodes, but I've kind of blacked out this portion of my life. So I think it was like 4, maybe 5 years ago or so. I was married for a hot second, like 6 months, and decided to leave being an advisor, start a consulting business. And that same week, got a divorce. I remember thinking in that moment, as I had this unpredictable income, I had no stability with a spouse. And I remember thinking in that moment, as I was like moving back into my dad's house at the time, and thinking to myself, this is either going to define me for the better or for the worse. Because it would be easy to say, yeah, but I'm not where I'm at right now, or I'm not at where I want to be right now because of this, because of that. And to be quite frank, given the circumstances, most people would understand and sort of give me a pass, but I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I took that path. And it was, to your point, a culmination of the little decisions that you make every day that can help propel you forward. And I think that the other thing that is an added benefit to taking the blame yourself, whether it's in your control or not, is it helps with your critical thinking skills. Mm-hmm. It helps with your problem solving skills. And when you really focus on that, it helps you just work through future problems because you've handled a circumstance like that before, as opposed to just writing it off, passing the blame, and not thinking about that situation. But when you blame other people, you're kind of speaking, in such a way that manifests that situation or a similar situation to continue to happen. And one of the ways that you kick off this keynote, and I'll share this phrase to tee it up for you, which is the idea of, and I love the rhyme here, words spoken set life in motion. I guess that's not a rhyme, but it sounded like it was a rhyme when I read it in my head. But words spoken set life in motion. And I'm a big believer of that. So I'm curious to hear kind of how you speak to that phrase and what folks can be doing practically to ensure that the things that they are speaking are for their benefit and not their detriment.
Yeah, with this principle, I like to use the example that like we're like farmers, and the words that come out of our mouth, the words that we repeat in our minds, they shape everything. And there's been a ton of, content over the last, especially, a couple of years, it seems like, in the personal development industry about this exact thing, the self-talk, that kind of a thing. But it truly is everything. When I was starting out, before I knew where to start, before I knew what to take action on, I knew it was like, okay, I got to change that conversation in here, because I was full of excuses. I was full of, I was not solution oriented. I was pointing at this thing and that thing. And I started noticing the conversation in my head that the minute I would get an idea, I would have, it's almost like if you really pay attention to how you talk to yourself, it'll scare the heck out of you, man. If you're not paying attention, if you're not conscious, it's crazy what's going on. You literally have like two voices. It's like, oh, I could try this. And immediately you got the other voice pipes up. Oh, what about this? No, that, remember that experience. And so the dialogue starts going before you even have a chance to take action on something, you've already talked yourself out of it. And so word spoken, set life in motion is exactly that. It's what comes out of your mouth, what's going on in your head, that your life is unfolding and you're basically speaking it into existence, whether you know it or not. You don't have to go too crazy. I know some people don't like the idea of, that, we're shaping the universe, or, people think some of that stuff is a little too far out there. But I mean, it's the truth. Whatever you believe, it's the way you talk to your kids, the way you talk to your friends. You kind of start developing a certain kind of a dialogue. And when you're in that group of friends, you all talk the same way. So even if you start thinking differently, even if you want to see new things in your life, your friends will ensure, that they'll put you back basically in your place, because it's what you've developed in that environment. It's the same thing in your head. You've kind of created this dialogue that then speaks over any new opportunity or anything. You kind of talk yourself out of it. And so what I started doing is I'd get a Sharpie and I'd start writing on my wrist, just like little acronyms, things that because when you're moving around or throughout the day, you always notice something that, it catches your eye. And I'm like, oh yeah. And it was just like a reminder, hey, what are you talking about? Or what are you thinking about? What's your dialogue like? What are you focusing on? That kind of a thing. On my whiteboard, I have it here in my office, and I used to have it in my room. So the first thing I would jump out of bed on my whiteboard, see up there, you can do anything you set your mind to. You're ready. You're qualified. These little affirmations that I put up there. So the first thing I see in the morning when I wake up, it's right there. That's the last thing I see before I go to bed. It's these, affirming new. So basically I was creating a new dialogue for myself.
Yeah.
You can't stop your dialogue. Your brain's always going. And I knew that the only way that I could change that was by changing the dialogue and just basically outspeaking myself, if it doesn't sound too crazy, but I knew I had to give myself a new conversation, a new direction. And so and the crazy thing is it started working, where this new language that I was giving myself, basically programming into myself, it started taking over. And all of a sudden, when I'm facing an obstacle or I want to do something, but it's scary, and it's like, all of a sudden it's like, why not? Why not you? Why aren't you qualified? Like, why wouldn't you be the one to be able to do this? And so instead of looking for excuses for why not to do it, I'm looking for excuses like, why can anybody else do this, but not me? Why am I less capable? And it was insane what happened. So it's a powerful thing.
So I may misquote this a little bit. It's been a while since I've read one of Dr. Joe Dispenza's books, but the way that he describes what you just said is you have these neural pathways in your brain that are basically become ingrained in you. So if you talk negatively, if you're self-defeating, whatever, it's almost like, and this is the example that was used, it's almost like if you've ever been skiing, you can see, where people are, skiing. There's like these paths that are created. And he said that you need to go through exercises like what you did, which is the silly little crazy things, writing on your wrist, writing on the whiteboard, writing on your mirror in the bathroom, like all those things, as weird as they may sound, like they actually work. You got to creatively trick yourself into becoming the person that you want to be to a degree. And what he said was, when you do those things, imagine a fresh snowfall coming down, covering up all those paths. And then you get to choose the new paths that are forged. So to the extent that helps folks remember, hopefully I didn't butcher that too much.
I love that.
But you got to be okay with kind of being silly and weird and doing things that other people aren't doing if you want to live a life that most other people aren't living.
Yeah.
And, the weirder it is, the more likely it is, going to stick.
Yeah.
So
yeah, sometimes you got to look like a psychopath, man. And just talking, I would like literally be talking under my breath, because the minute like the fear and the things would start, the negative dialogue will start coming in. It's just like, okay, I can't stop it. I'm literally going to verbally, like almost, I would just start repeating the things that I'd have on my whiteboard, like sometimes almost verbally, because sometimes I'd be going in such a negative and downward spiral that it felt like if I wasn't, and I got to the point where I put alarms like every 10, 15 minutes on my phone throughout the entire day. So they go off, I'd look at it. Okay, recite this or say this, this one true sentence, whatever it was. And so, sometimes you got to look like a psycho, but I love what you said, if you want to experience the life that other people don't have, do what other people don't do. So, or something like that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I stole that from someone else too. So
not
unique by any means.
Yep.
So I want to take a moment, and A, we don't have time to go through all 11 habits today. B, I don't want to give away your entire presentation for free. I want to keep some room for imagination. But the 11 habits Words spoken set life in motion, number one. Number two, live with the end in mind. Number three, in all things, be filled with gratitude. Number four, each day, give yourself more than you have before. Number five, blame no one but yourself. Number six, develop a burning desire. Number seven, you must take action. Number eight, always persist. Number nine, you are a creature of habit. Number 10, love will set you free. And number 11, you must choose to believe. And the one that I want to focus on, because I just have no idea which direction you're going to take this in, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on it, is point number 10, which is love will set you free. So I'm just going to kind of shut up and listen and let you take that sort of however, which way you take that. But that's probably one that I'm most curious on as to the message behind that point.
Sure. So all these, just to give you a little bit of background, all 11 of these principles, they're from my first book. So that's the Mount of Olives, 11 Declarations to an Extraordinary Life. And so in the book, they're written, it's a fictional story, but they're written as declarations that the character kind of speaks over his life, each one of those themes. So that's why they're kind of written out in like a poetic kind of, versus just like a regular principle. They're written out in a poetic kind of a theme. Love will set you free. This is a principle. I mean, it's funny because I wrote the book 5 years ago, that my first one, but it's probably more true, more needed now than it's ever been before. And it's the idea of, if you want to be truly happy and truly successful, we all know, I know, David, you know this, that just increasing your level of income or the things that you own in life doesn't increase necessarily your happiness. It might increase your time freedom. It might increase your comfortability of lifestyle, but it doesn't increase the happiness. And the most important thing I learned since I was a kid is giving back, is serving, is finding other ways to lift other people up. That's what true joy, fulfillment, peace and appreciation comes from. That's what I believe in. So love will set you free is, I put that in there because I know people that make a lot of money that are miserable. Like I said, this is not something new. We've said this before and these examples used. And so, love will set you free. It's such a simple principle, but if you really, especially in today's world, if you really find a way to, whether it's giving back with your skills, with your talents, with your abilities, with, teaching, finding the percentage of the time of coaching people maybe for free where normally you charge, or, normally I charge for speaking one fee, but if it's like a small school or they don't have a speaking fee, I'll go and donate time. It's just little things that you give back, but it stuck with me really. Do you remember the Las Vegas shooting that happened at the country concert? So when that shooting happened, I reached out to a lot of the family members of the victims and I said, I don't have, I can't understand what you're going through. I don't have much, but, I just wanted to send you a gift, and I would send them copies of my book. And, I put little notes in there, but I got a letter back from a mother who lost her only son there. And it was she wrote this long letter for me and just thanking me, just how me just taking the time, somebody who didn't know her, taking the time to send her this gift, like how big of a thing it was for her in such a crazy time in her life, and it's not to pat myself on the back, but it was such a simple thing. Signed the book. I wrote a little note in there. I went out to the mailbox. I put it in the mailbox. I sent it off. I forgot about it, months later when she sent me the letter back. And it was just, to me, it was just such a huge reminder, man, that you can be around people in your office. You can be around people at the grocery store. They're, literally falling apart, and they're not going to carry it on their face. They won't show you, people still got to live their lives, and somebody just lost someone, and so we're just in a society right now that's just at each other's throats. We're divided. We scan somebody up and down. Oh, they're dressed like this. They must have voted this way. They probably think this. And we just immediately find ways to separate ourselves, and who's a friend, who's a foe. And I think it's needed now more than ever, that it's just like I said, you never know when you're passing by somebody that their life is literally falling apart. And so it's just simple little things that you can do that can literally touch somebody and impact them for the rest of their life. And so that's why I wanted to include that principle there. I think it's huge. I think it's a big reminder for us that, we have strong opinions, strong things, and strong views right now, especially. But at the end of the day, we're human beings, man. And there's no need to be at each other's throats, just because we disagree on something. So,
well, first of all, that was a really cool and touching story in terms of reaching out to the folks affected by that. And I think it's, I often say that I love to pass out smiles, make people happy. And for example, this guy, Robert Sophia, who's going to be on the podcast here shortly, He's the CEO of one of the largest marketing companies in our industry. And he tweeted, he said, explain to me what marketing is in 5 words or less. So I tweeted back at him, and I'll keep this version PG, but I just said, give a blank about people, right? Just give a crap about people, right? And when you treat people the way that you want to be treated, the universe has a way of rewarding you for that at some point in the future. So it's just living your life as someone that is focused on helping people, whichever way that you can.
Yeah.
And it could be a simple conversation. It could be a book. It could be, a birthday call. It doesn't need to be anything groundbreaking. It just, if they feel loved, that goes a long way.
Sometimes just something as simple as noticing somebody, looking them in the eye. And I'm blessed. I come from a family I have 7 brothers, 5 sisters. I don't know if we've...
Holy moly.
Yeah. So I don't know if we've ever talked about that before we started, but I come from a huge family. I'm blessed, man. And we're tight. We're my brothers and I used to play after high school. We all played on the semi-pro football team. So we'd make up half the defense. There were 5 of us played on the same team. I'm closer with my brothers right now than I am with most of my friends. We're close. Anything we do, there's at least 2 or 3 of us hanging out. And so I'm blessed because I know big families that aren't close. But the point I'm getting at is I come from such a powerful upbringing, such a, uplifting, strong, same mom, same dad, good parents. I know that I have something that so many people don't have. I've been blessed with a gift in this life. And now I can't just keep that in for myself. There's people out there that, I think they say the millennials right now are the most depressed generation. It's I think they say 25% of millennials don't have a close friend, and 35% don't even have an acquaintance or a close acquaintance.
Yeah.
I might be butchering that, but that's insane to me to not have somebody that you can fall back on, to even have a conversation, to just be stuck in your own head all the time, especially during with all this going on right now. That's insane. That's crazy and very sad to me. So to me, it's just I have this gift. I can't just keep it to myself. I have to give it back. And I have to understand that what I have, not many people have. And simple things of even just acknowledging, noticing somebody can be huge, monumental for people that, are living through this time. So
100%. So before we start to wrap up, one of the segments that we go through is asking our guests what their favorite book is or what some of their favorite books are, and just getting their perspective, trying to distill a reading list for the folks who are listening to the show. With that being said, you submitted 2. We've heard about Think and Grow Rich from a couple other guests as well. Yeah. So if you haven't added that to your reading list, definitely do so. And then you also chose The Greatest Salesman of the World from the same author that you mentioned with the other book that we talked about. So share with me why you picked those books and, briefly sort of what the impact it's been on for you.
It's been really cool because the funny thing about Think and Grow Rich, I've heard about it for so long. And so when I got into my personal development journey, still sitting in that cubicle in my old job when I was, kind of depressed and miserable, that was one of the first books that I got after I started understanding the power of reading and what it can do. And so it was funny that as I started learning and reading about more and more and learning about more and more successful people, how many people actually contribute their success to that book.
Yep.
From Tony Robbins to Jim Rohn to Og Mandino, I was just wow. So it wasn't just my discovery, but so many people attribute their success to that book. And so that's a must read just for that reason. It was one of those books that was just allowed me to realize that literally every thought, every conversation, everything that is going on in my head is shaping every aspect of my life. And so it was powerful principles in that book.
To interject quickly,
sure.
That's a book for those who are listening. If you haven't read it, definitely scoop it up. But also if you have read it, personally, I read that book at the beginning of every year, just as a way to kind of set the stage for, the year to come. So there's certain books that are kind of one and done, and there's certain books that should be a part of, your life every year moving forward. So definitely, if you haven't picked it up in a while, there'll be some good reminders in there. So I interject, keep going.
Yeah. I think I've read it about 6 times, I think, over the years, but I'm getting ready to read it again. Actually, it is one of those books, that you definitely should read, go back to, because every time you read it, you're learning, you're picking up something new or getting reminded. So it's awesome. And then The Greatest Salesman in the World, that one book. So I mentioned A Better Way to Live by Og Mandino. That was the book, the first one that I stumbled upon. The Greatest Salesman in the World, it's written as a fictional story. So whereas the other one is actually about Og Mandino's life and his kind of story, this one is a fictional story and it's got these life principles. So if you read my first book, it's very similar to The Greatest Salesman in the World. And that's by design, because for me, when I read that book, you can, especially there's so many personal development books right now that everyone kind of takes the same principles and puts their own spin on it. But when it was written in a story form, it just stuck with me, and it stuck with me. Yeah, I was able to just grasp the principles so well. And so I was like, all right, that's the way I want to write. I want to write in that style. And so I did everything I could to imitate that style. So that's why I always recommend that book. And I know that book is also, a lot of people attribute their success to that book as well. So that's why I picked those two.
Cool. Yeah, I've read that one. I haven't read the other one that you mentioned from Og Mandino, so I scooped that, but I can attest to that in that, there's a lot of nonfiction books out there that are super valuable, but there's a lot of fiction books that make it easier to remember because of the format that they're in. So we'd definitely check that out. So Michael, I appreciate you joining. If I am a listener who wants to check you out some more, maybe connect with you on various social channels, or we do also have larger firms and conference organizers who listen to our episode. So if they're interested in exploring what it looks like to have you speak at their event, where do you want to send folks to?
So the best place for that would be my website. So that's www.speaklife365.com. So that's my speaker website. Of course, I got links to my books and things in there. But that's like the best place to go to find everything about me. And, so yeah, starting with that.
Awesome. Well, when you go to the website, I will say he's done a great job. And when you click on speaking topics, outlining the topics, given, the kind of bullet points of the keynote. And then after each one, he also has a little highlight reel so you can see Michael in action. So great job on the website, just as a side note.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
With that being said, would highly encourage you to also check out his books. And I looked on his website, and when you click on more, it says Michael's books, and you're redirected to that site for the book. So feel free to go and scoop one up. If you would like a free book, however, if you would be so kind as to leave us a review on iTunes, it would help kind of increase listenership and visibility within the podcast world. So as a thank you for doing so, once that actually posts, just screenshot that, shoot me an email at david@modelfa.com. And Michael has a choice of 3 different books that I'm seeing right here. So let me know which one you want. And the first 10 people that do that, I will buy the book for you. So I'll get your details, so that it can ship to the right place. And I'm happy to buy that book as a thank you for leaving a review. So feel free to buy it on your own. But if you want a free one, let me know.
I appreciate that, David. And from the book website, that's where I do the signed copies. Most people buy on Amazon. So that's probably the best place for people to go to get it quicker. And they can just look up my name, Michael V. Ivanov. They'll find it. But as far as you leaving or sending books to people, leave reviews, I'll one up you a little bit. I'll sign them and I'll just send them to you. And then you can send them out to whoever. So don't worry about getting them from it. Yeah, I'll ship those out to you, man.
Well, I appreciate that. So with that being said, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, you can feel motivated from this. You could feel inspired from this, but you're not going to benefit from this unless you take action. So whatever resonated with you that you want to take action on, or even just leaving a review so you get a free book, take action on that. So appreciate everyone listening. Michael, it was great having you on the show today. Again, big thank you to Ivan Farber for introducing us. And I hope that our paths continue to cross, and I see you on the stage at some of our industry conferences.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, Ivan. David, thank you so much, man. It's been an honor. It's always, anytime I can get a stimulating conversation, man, I love it. I could talk all day, man. So I really appreciate you having me on and being a part of the show. Thank you.
No problem. We'll talk soon. Take care.